and manifests His glory and His beauty so compellingly to them that not only are they able to rise up from the slavehold, but they now freely indenture themselves to God forever and ever as His slaves. That's how you got saved. And your job is to say, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I embrace it, I receive it. This is my treasure. Christ's work for me and God's work in me is my hope and my life. Parenthesis. And this parenthesis comes straight out of verse 19. Are you bothered by the imagery of slavery? You should be. Especially in America, right? Where the history of slavery is so woven together with the most demeaning kind of racism that bears fruit to our own day. We should hear these words of slavery to God and slavery to sin with some discomfort, because Paul did. Right? Verse 18 is a parallel of verse 22, which we're in right now. Verse 18 says, having been freed from sin, you became slaves to righteousness. That's the same thing as we just read in verse 22. And then notice how Paul responds to that. He kind of puts in a parenthesis and he says, I'm speaking in human terms because of the weakness of your flesh. Isn't that amazing? He's squeamish about this imagery that he's using. He wants to apologize in part for the imagery of slavery. Why? Because in our finitude and our sinfulness, we humans grope for adequate language for great and glorious and complex realities, and there is no adequate language for the greatest realities, and so we settle for the best we can do: analogies, images, stories, pictures, philosophical phrases, and we have to realize all of them fall short. This one especially. Because there are things about slavery that dare not be applied to our relationship to God. Even though Paul says we are enslaved to righteousness and enslaved to God. Verse 18 and verse 20. Jesus did the same thing. Remember? Chapter 15 of the book of John. Verse 15. No longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what his master is doing. But I call you friends, for all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Some aspects of slavery are right to apply to your relation to God, some are not. Some aspects of friendship are right to apply to your relationship to God, some are not. Can you make those distinctions? You become a sage when you start making these kinds of distinctions. When you don't just glibly say, well, that's a word will apply to us and God, and don't think there are some things about friendship you dare not apply to God. You don't hobnob with God as a peer. No way. God is God in heaven, and we are on the earth. Let all the earth keep silence before Him. This is not mere friendship. But it is. It is. And it is not slavery in all of slavery's connotations. But it is. It is slavery. Well, what piece applies here then? Chapter 6 of Romans, verse 6, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, all of them talk about slavery. It's all over this chapter. You know what it does not imply in any verse of this chapter? it does not imply being forced to do something against your will. Isn't that interesting? That's what we think of as slavery. None of these uses mean that. It implies, rather, that our wills are enslaved. So we think, oh, I'm enslaved. I don't want to go there. I'm made to go there, so I'm a slave. And my will is all this way. That's not the picture in this chapter at all. This chapter pictures not me enslaved, my will free, but my will is enslaved. That's the picture in this chapter. My will is enslaved. I am so corrupt before conversion that my mind and my heart regard pride and money and sex and whatever as more to be desired than righteousness and God and worship. And when you regard it as more to be desired, you do it. Because you always follow what your will regards as more desirable. And then when you get converted, and you're set free, and God opens your eyes, and you see Christ is more desirable, more treasure, more precious, then your will is now locked in to a new motive. So slavery in this chapter is not being forced to do what you don't want to do. It's having a will that must do what appears most desirable. And it's either sin or God. That's the picture in this chapter. Last point. Our eternal life depends on freedom from sin. Not perfection, but freedom from the mastery, the slavery to sin. Verse 22, let's read. But now, having been freed from sin and enslaved to God, you derive your benefit, or literally, you have your fruit. You're bearing fruit. Being enslaved to God, you are now necessarily bearing fruit unto holiness or sanctification, and the outcome, the goal, the end of that, eternal life. Now, eternal life is in contrast to death in verse 21. Notice that. Verse 21. What benefit, what fruit, literally, what fruit were you then deriving from the things of which you are now ashamed? For the outcome, the goal, the end of those things is death. In other words, the result of living in slavery to sin is death. But now verse 22 gives the contrary. The result of being freed from sin, bearing fruit unto sanctification, is eternal life. And those two steps leading to that third are essential. 1, freedom from slavery to sin. 2, bearing fruit unto holiness or sanctification. And its end, eternal life. You see how serious the fight of faith is? Remember what Paul said to Timothy? 1 Timothy 6:12. Fight the good fight of faith. Anybody know what the next phrase is? Lay hold on eternal life. If you think, say, and act, you don't need to fight this fight. You let go of eternal life. Do you see what's at stake in your fight, young people? At high school, grade school, college, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, into the career, middle age, reached it. Wasn't what you thought it was going to be. New choices on the horizon. Aged. How will we die? You see what's at stake in fighting the good fight of faith? Oh, may you come to the end of your life like Paul in 2 Timothy 4:8 and say, I have fought the good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. He never stopped fighting. Not to the very end. Not to the very end. And I'll bet when the lion was coming at him, or the sword, whichever it was, he was fighting at that very moment. Oh, Christ, keep yourself clear and beautiful before me, lest I embrace apostasy as more to be desired than this sword.